Well, just for recording's sake, I'm Lan Wilson, first year student at Drew Theological Seminary. And would you tell us who you are?
I'm Marc Kline. I'm Rabbi at Temple of Sholom in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania now.
Awesome. And how long have you been there?
I've been here for 2 months. Before that, I was in New Jersey for 8 years. And before that, Lexington for 11 years and South Carolina for 8 years. Before that, seminary, and before that, practicing law. And I don't know that you need me to go back any further than that.
Wait, did you say Lexington? Did we talk about that?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
You were there.
I forgot. I totally forgot about it because I grew up in Lexington.
Yeah, I was there for 11 years.
And which one?
I was at Temple Adath Israel, downtown.
Downtown. Okay. By Central Office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on Ashland Avenue, right down the street from Ashland Elementary.
I know exactly where it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was there for 11 years before going to New Jersey, and I was there for 8 years.
And where are you from originally?
I grew up in Las Vegas, went to college in New Orleans, law school in New Orleans. No, law school in Arkansas. Sorry. Law school in Little Rock, Arkansas. And then Cincinnati for years for seminary, and then South Carolina, and then Lexington, and then New Jersey, and then here.
Wow. So you have a law degree as well.
I do. Practiced for 6 years, and when I left the practice, I've never looked back.
So how did you know you were called to be a rabbi?
You're not old enough to know what Whitewater was, but it was a scandal involving the law firm that Hillary Clinton worked for. And it was ugly. It made the practice of law in Little Rock just beyond ugly. And she was in that law firm because she was the first lady of the state. Bill was governor, and she was the only honest lawyer that I got to work. She's tough as nails, but you could take what she said to the bank. But her law partners were, and as the indictment started coming down, I can tell you the next one, it was just that. At the same time, I started getting more involved at the synagogue, not because I'm a religious person, but it was a way of, in fact, it was my wife, my late wife, who got me involved because she went through conversion without telling me. The rabbi told me. And his son and I had been working on a law case together. So that's how I got to know them. And so I got involved, and then the more I was doing, the more I wanted to do, because I really felt I was making a difference, not so much religiously as I was teaching and helping. And then, well, things happen. And I decided that what I was doing at the synagogue meant a whole lot more to me than what I was doing in the law office. Closed my law office, and I've never looked back. That was 1990.
Wow.
I'm old.
Not that old.
I qualify for Social Security this year, okay?
Oh, wow. Well,
good news is I don't have to take it, but I qualify.
So how would you, if you had to describe in a few sentences what you do in your current role in Harrisburg, how would you describe it?
I serve as the interim rabbi right now, hoping, and they want me to stay, but my job is to serve as the lead clergy for the congregation, and at the same time help in healing and transformation as they look into the future. And it's the work that I've been doing as a consultant for years, separate from my synagogue life. And now I'm getting to do it in the place that I actually serve as rabbi. I'm following someone who had gotten stale, and the congregation got stale around him. And as it's happening in houses of worship across the country, thousands of houses of worship across the country are closing. And it's because religion has become irrelevant, because we started talking more about religion than faith. And because people feel that they have a right to power, and that's both clergy and laity. And they forget that serving God is about the struggle, and it's about the compromises and the the figuring out how to make community work, even when we don't agree. And we've forgotten that religion isn't about God. Faith is about God. Religion is how we play out the way we see faith. And so we are launching attacks at people of different religions as if it's a different God. So my job as rabbi is to help make sense out of that for people. And specifically here in this congregation, to help us grow past the barriers that had been holding people back from experiencing really the growth and evolution and joy that faith should bring. I mean, you're embarking on a new career officially, seeking ordination, and you see what happens in churches, and its numbers are dwindling, except in the incredibly charismatic places. But are they coming because of the charisma of the pastor, or are they coming because they want faith? You remember Gil Caldwell?
Yeah.
Dear friend, Gil's last sermon at Second Baptist in Asbury, I mean, he called them out. He said, "Y'all are here, and it's a great service, and it's wonderful music, and a good message, and you're getting your fix. And now you're going to spend the rest of the week coming down from this high and going into withdrawal, and you're going to come back next week to get your fix. And the question is, why is it that Sunday mornings for an hour and a half feeds you, and you don't do anything with that food other than let it dissipate the rest of the week?" And for me, that's nothing short of prophetic. Of course, that was Gil. Gil was prophetic. My job, as I see it, is to get us back to A, human, and B, faith. And sometimes that means the religion has to change so that faith can hold sway. But you know what? None of us do it the same way we did it 500 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So if it can't be relevant, then the question is, why are we doing it? Faith shouldn't take us out of our lives into doing something different that 1 hour or 2 hours of worship. Faith should be about how we live. And I know at some level I'm preaching to the choir.
No, I appreciate it. And I'm so glad we're recording this, because I'm getting all kinds of quotes that I get to use in my sermons. They'll be like,
I would be honored.
Eventually, somebody's gonna start asking, "Who's this rabbi he's quoting every week?" Like,
I was blessed that I got to help ordain Kerwin before I moved, and that he wanted me to be part of his ordination was really a blessing. So, and I've never felt compromised as a rabbi, as a Jew, helping people of other traditions be faithful.
Yeah.
Me helping Kerwood become a minister in Christ, I'm not a Christian, but that's what moves his soul. And he blessed me with the opportunity to help do that for him.
Yeah.
So yeah. And on top of all that is the management of the administration and the fixing of systems and making sure that houses of worship remember that we are a faith-based organization and not a business. There's a business aspect to it. Certainly we need, the income. But if you're more concerned with what's in the plate than you are what's in the message, there's a problem. Because if you have a good message and a good mission, then the plate will be full. Because the question I'd ask them is, well, what's wrong with your mission that people aren't supporting it?
Okay. So if you could describe your leadership style, how would you describe
it? Leaders empower people. Managers operate with tasks. So managers take, this has to be done, and you're going to do it this way. Leaders empower people to figure out how to create teams and networks to get things done. So we identify issues that impact us, not me. And I support people taking leadership roles. So I don't need to micromanage my religious school. I have an educator who I hired because, she's competent as an educator. And then I provide support to that, as opposed to you will teach this and you will teach that. And I know that in lots of houses of worship, the pastor or the rabbi or the priest are people will default to them the power to make decisions and then get upset with the decisions they make, because it was never supposed to be like that. The church is not the pastor. The church is the people, right? And the pastor, rabbi, or priest, synagogue, etc., we are the coordinator for what they see is in their best interest in their relationship with each other and with God. And we can help, and our job is to give people tools, and our job is to help guide people, to give people things to chew on. But ultimately, we serve. And so it's not my synagogue. I'm its rabbi. And a lot of our colleagues forget that. My church, it's my pulpit. And, they were there before you got there, and they're going to be there after you leave. So my job as a leader, or my role as a leader, is to empower people to make competent decisions, to do the research they need, to be thoughtful, to take ownership, to stretch, to reach beyond their boundaries, to help people see past horizons. I used to love, we did Shabbat services out on the ocean, on the beach sometimes, and I would look out there and I'd say, tell me what you see. And people, well, there's water. I said, well, but there's stuff beyond the water, right? Well, of course, there's land, and there's ships, that we don't see, and then there's islands, and there's land out there. And I said, and that, but right now you can't prove that to me. So faith is knowing that there's something beyond our horizons. We can't prove it, but that it's there. So with our kids, I'll say, do you love your mom? Of course I love my mom. How much? 9 or 12? And they look at me like, that's a stupid question. I said, of course it's a stupid question. You can't quantify how much you love somebody. Or someone says 12. I said, well, why not 14? Well, you didn't give me that option. So I get to tell you how much you get to love your mother, But we're so used to 2 + 2 has to equal 4 that we forget that 2 + 2 can equal 22. And 2 + 2 can equal 0. 2 apples and 2 oranges equals 0 bananas. But 4 is only one of the answers. But man, we're going to die on our sword proving that 4 is the only answer. But faith, imagine Einstein being stuck with what he got before he came up with E = mc². Imagine Muhammad or Jesus or Moses being stuck with what was before. So we celebrate these people who innovate, and yet we're not going to do that. And so we've lost touch with I keep going back to the word faith, which is that boundary stretcher. And so in leadership, our job is to help people be more faithful, not to be more rule obeying, not to be more like us or march in our way. And so I tell students, I don't care if you agree with me or not. Back up what you believe, but think about it. And this divide right now between Republicans or Democrats or Christian nationalists and all of this stuff is because we've forgotten that our job is to work with and listen to each other, that it's not about winning. When there's a winner and a loser, humanity loses. And that's, so cancel culture is, if you don't do it my way, it's like if I'm an Air Force pilot, if you're my wingman and you don't agree with me, I could die. So I'm going to treat everybody as if you're my wingman, and you better march to my orders or I have no use for you. And you know what? That's not how the world works. So long answer to your question, but leadership is supposed to empower people to realize that we need each other and we need to respect each other, and that it's our job, not the rabbi's job or the pastor's job, to run the house of worship. And I tell people that volunteerism is what you do outside. You don't get volunteer hours for putting your kid to bed or taking out your trash, right? You do it because it's your family, it's your home. Well, when
Mm-hmm.
you're in your house of worship, that's your home, that's your family. Volunteer is what we do out in the community. But when you're doing stuff in your house of worship, you're taking care of your family and you're taking care of your home. So don't tell me you're counting volunteer hours for that. And for leadership, don't tell me you showed up to a council meeting last night and so you gave. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, so I don't know. Let me ask my other question because I feel like I could do that all day.
Please.
What are
I'm
your
loving it. So
so tell us then what are your values as a leader, and what do you feel? Yeah, I'll ask that, and then I'll ask you another version of the same question.
my values as a leader. I value people. I value faith. And I value people professing and living their own faith while respecting each other's.
Mm.
Tradition is very important, but to quote one of my teachers, the past has a vote, but not a veto. So I don't want to throw out what was, but sometimes we have to evolve what was into what should be and what should be. So there are times that rituals continue to make sense, and there's times that rituals need to be adapted or changed to make sense.
Mm.
In a world when there was no interreligious marriage, you could preach that this is a X house. But now you've got all these people who have fallen in love with people from different religious traditions. And you have to be able to say, this is God's house. Now, we may do things according to this tradition, but your family, irrespective of what label you wear. And it has to be universal. In 1969, the Supreme Court of the United States, in Loving versus Virginia, said that marriage was an inalienable right, and that was in the interracial marriage case. And the Supreme Court didn't say interracial marriage is an inalienable right; it said marriage is an inalienable right. And then you start telling people who are gay they can't get married. But love, we've said love is love. Marriage is an inalienable right, which means nobody can take that right away from you.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't say, except where we don't like you. Gil caught all sorts of hell because as a black minister in the 80s and 90s, he was on the National PFLAG board.
Mm-hmm.
And, that wasn't fashionable in African-American clergy, who, by the way, fought racism and bigotry all over the place, except in homosexuality when it was okay. And people who throw the Bible at me, and white churches, synagogues who throw the Bible at me and forget its universality.
Right.
Passover is not a Jewish holiday. It's an Old Testament holiday with a Jewish bent on it. But why can't Christians have Passover? Okay. Not instead of Judaism's Passover, but in addition to. And so Christians who want a Passover, their first answer is, well, we have to undo the Jewish Passover for the legitimate Passover. Well, why can't we both have legitimate Passovers?
Right.
And by the way, in the Quran, when Musa goes to Pharaoh and does the miracles of the snake and all of that, Pharaoh is convinced, and Pharaoh leads the people out of Egypt. We never get to that point, I'm really, one of the greatest values I hold dearly is we've got to understand that human experience roots in faith. And we can't be fully human if we don't appreciate each other's faith.
I'm loving this. I'm just yeah, I can't wait to go back and just rewatch and write all the notes I can. And it's
Well,
gonna
I'm
be
blessed because I haven't had a chance to have this type of a conversation in a while. So thank you.
oh man, I love it. I love it. So as you know, like I said, I'm in seminary, and thanks to one of the even though the pandemic has been a tragedy that we will all never forget, it one of the blessings of it is that my classmates are in Canada and the Congo and Zimbabwe and Korea, everywhere,
Yep.
Great Britain. I have classmates all over. And so I'm going to be sharing with them some things from our conversation. What would you what would you say to young, and when I say young, I mean young in ministry, budding religious leaders?
Um, Bring me in as a scholar in residence, um, which I would love to do, and I've done a lot. But no, seriously, it is. You have the opportunity to reshape the world of faith, and recognizing, especially in your situation, that you're coming from cultures all over the world. You have firsthand understandings that people see God and tradition through different lenses. And while you're all in a Christian context, because you see how different even that Christianity looks to each other, by extension, you can see people who are outside of Christianity and how their faith is the same faith, even if it's a different religion, different language, using a different word for God. But you have the opportunity to reshape the way in which the world finds God. And it can't happen exclusively within a Christian context, and certainly exclusively within an American Christian context, or a white or Black American Christian context. It happens within a much broader understanding that if God is the creator of everything, and we believe God doesn't make mistakes, then people of different traditions aren't wrong and aren't aberrations. They're a different creation of that same loving God. And without the baggage of years and years and years of teaching tradition where everybody that goes to school comes from the same area or the same community or the same background, you have that blessing of a different example of what brought you all together. And I think that, Daisy Machado is a professor at Union Theologic Seminary.
Mm-hmm.
She was for short term, the president at the Lexington Theologic Seminary. I don't know if you remember that. Did you happen to be there when she gave her inaugural address?
I didn't. I was there when Dr. Gillette came in, but not with her.
Okay. When Daisy gave her inaugural sermon, she said, seminaries have to stop teaching seminarians that God exists. They have to start teaching what God does. And that was for me so prophetic, because when you teach when you teach people that God exists, then you have to quantify God. God has to look a certain way or act a certain way or be seen in a certain light, because that's because we need tangible. But when we teach what God does, the easy part is to then say, and how does God do whatever it is? It's when we do it. So when I'm working with a bar bat mitzvah student, a 12-year-old, I ask them, how do miracles get performed? And they look at me and I said, well, let me ask you this. You and I are sitting here and you hear someone in the parking lot screaming, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm starving to death if I don't eat something now. I said, you got three choices. Choice is you ignore it. Or you say, hey, Rabbi, let's go look at the window and watch this guy die of starvation in the parking lot. Or you run to the kitchen, you pull something out of the refrigerator and you go bring it to him. Which would you choose? And inevitably, it's always, well, I'd go feed him. Well, great. So now that guy was praying to God for food. And how did that prayer get answered? Because God can't feed people we won't. And you can't pray hunger away. You can't pray disease and poverty away unless you go do something to make it different. And you know what? I don't care what religion you are. I don't care what language you speak, what color or sexual orientation or any of it. When you bring food to somebody who's starving, you have saved their life. And the fire truck, when they get to your house that's on fire, they don't say, excuse me, but who did you vote for president in the last election? Oh, no, I don't agree. We're taking the fire truck and we're leaving. So when we're talking about the stuff that really matters, those things they don't come into the equation. So why should they matter the rest of the time?
Mm.
So long advice to seminarians. Remember that you serve the human experience, not just the church denomination that you represent.
Mm.
As a chaplain, I don't care what room I walk into the hospital, or as a police chaplain, what situation. When I'm there, I'm not Rabbi Marc. I am Marc who's helping someone in a time of need in their search for some godly response.
Mm. Well, thank you, Marc. I want to just say, man, you have some people you have these conversations with, you feel like they open the fire hydrant. That's how I felt sometimes with Gil spoke, because he had like these decades and decades of just like experience that you're like trying to keep up with him as he's holding on to his thoughts, in his 80s. You have just poured out so many nuggets of wisdom that I'm grateful for, and I hope that people that listen to this are grateful for too.
Well, thank you. I've had great teachers. Please, anything that I've learned from incredible people who have taught me. I owe so much.
Yeah, we definitely talk about, and we've been talking about in class, kind of that, the hall of faith that we all walk through, and the people that that have helped shaped who we are and who we are in the faith as well. Can I ask you to do one last thing before we end, and then I want to make sure I'm staying true to the time for the assignment. Would you just say a brief word of prayer for young leaders, young religious leaders that are coming up in ministry, like you have gone down the path, or going down the path that you've already been down and that you're speaking to now?
God, in the many traditions that seek you, the many languages that speak to you, and from the places in the world that find you in different light, give us the responsibility and the love to understand that we share the human experience, and that in ministry, our job is to help people find you, not in our point of view, but in a point of view that moves them closer to faith. And in that, we can truly make the words, Bayom Hahu Ye'erana Echad Shemo Echad. In Hebrew, it means, or in English, that Hebrew means, on that day, God will be one, and God's name will be one, and we'll be able to live together in peace. Amen.
Well, thank you, my friend. I'm so glad we got a chance to talk. Text me so we can catch up. I can get you those numbers again.
Well, actually, I just found them in my phone.
Did?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
And so that's also a blessing. But let's stay in touch, please. I'd love to continue on your journey with you.
Definitely.
We can't have shared Lexington and New Jersey and Harrisburg and not take that as a sign that you and I got work to do.
Definitely.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's hold each other accountable to that. I'll definitely be keeping in touch, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Best to you, and I'll look forward to it. Thanks, my friend.
Blessings, Marc. Thank you.
Bye-bye.